Welcome back. Welcome back. In today's abbreviated live stream, this is the I'm streaming until I have to go pick up my son live stream. He had his he's in band, and so he had to play. Oh shoot, he's in band, and so he had to play tonight, and so basically streaming until he gives me the call, and I got to go get him. So this episode may be slightly abridged. So just putting that little bug in your ear. You're gonna see one of the things is in my day job I do marketing, and I teach people marketing, and I'm also teaching people how to record themselves and stuff like that. And so you're going to see a link to join one of my communities to learn marketing from me and another marketer who's also named Brian, and we'll teach you the ins and outs of marketing your business. And so that's the link you're seeing right now. Um, I got a lot of stuff going on, guys. Your boy is busy, and so really a lot of it is I have to lock in on some specific things and let some stuff go, and that is one of the challenges of basically being your own business. When you're your own business, you determine your hours, and um, oftentimes you put yourself in a position where you're constantly working, and you never get a chance, never get a day off. And for somebody with my temperament, that isn't always a good thing. And so that kind of jumps into really my first topic. And like I said, I'm on here until I have to go pick my kid up. So first topic, and before we get started, thank you. Welcome back. Um, the first topic is John Henryism, and for those that don't know, John Henry was the steel driving man. He was a kind of a folk hero, a black folk hero, and the entire concept is John Henry's steel driving man. Nobody could work as hard as he did, and ostensibly in the story, John Henry, his heroic act, his last act on this earth was working himself to death. And unfortunately, that's kind of that's kind of what happens um, as as a black male, black woman in this country, specifically. And there's a very specific narrow tract I'm talking about. Um, there is the first generation that got hit with the black excellence thing, and these are kids that are my age who grew up, their parents were in the civil rights era, and they were the first ones to integrate. So some of them were directly in the civil rights era, some of them were a little bit younger. Um, and the unfortunate side of it is the thing we got hit with, and a lot of black kids that are my age, a lot of black folks that are my age, has heard this a bajillion times. You have to work twice as hard to get half as far. And that became kind of a rallying cry for a lot of us. That became a motivating factor. It's why I felt like I had to outperform everybody in college. It's why I had to outperform everybody in high school. It's why I felt like I had to outperform everybody at my job. I had to go above and beyond. If somebody's willing to put in 40 hours, I had to put in 60, because I had to prove that not only could I do more, I could achieve more, and I was more driven to do it. And that ended up becoming an obsession in my life. And I talked to a lot of guys, a lot of black folks that are my age who've experienced that, where you constantly feel like you feel bad for taking time off. You feel bad for taking a vacation. A couple weeks ago, I lost my father-in-law. Um, and it was an absolute shock to the rest of the family. And we went through the entire grieving thing, but I was hit with this. Like, I'm sitting in the hotel, and everybody's just kind of reeling in their own way, and I'm racked with this intense guilt because there was work that needed to be done that I wasn't able to do, and I felt bad for taking time off for the funeral. like I felt like I was slacking to take time off to grieve. Um, I can count the number of funerals that I've actually taken time off to kind of process my feelings on one hand. um, I've dealt with losses of people I've cared about and I've grown up with, and went to work that same day because I could not allow myself the opportunity. Hey, how's it going? Thanks for tuning in. Um, I could not get grant myself um, the ability to take time off to grieve. And I felt like I had something to prove to myself. I had to prove constantly that I deserved to be in the seat that I was in, even when I was the best qualified person. I always felt like there was this drumbeat of you have to go above and beyond and execute in ways that other people ain't executing on. And like I said, I'm sitting at the hotel after the funeral, feeling guilty because I'm not working. Crazy. That's crazy. What's up, y'all? Thanks for tuning in. Um, yeah, what's up? How y'all doing? But yeah, I actually felt guilty for grieving the loss of somebody that I known and was family. I felt bad, like a friend I grew up with from the time we were like 4 years old, um, was killed by the cops, and I was rocked, saw it on the news, absolutely devastated, and I had about maybe 45 minutes to try to compose myself to go in and put in a double shift. And I got there and I kind of told my supervisor at the time, what I was going through, what I was experiencing, and my supervisor's reaction was, "Oh yeah, man, I saw all the news. Terrible thing. I'm really glad his dad didn't blame the cops though." And that was the end all be all of, hey, yeah, I just lost somebody I've grown up with since I was 3 years old. And so that's how I've always processed grief. And it's not a positive thing. It's a negative thing. It's not a great thing. But a lot of folks my generation, that's how we were taught. You go out there, you suck it up. I've gone to work on a severely broken ankle, when it put in two double shifts on a broken ankle. Like I said, I've lost people, friends, family, people that are really, really close to me, and I go in and put in work. The only time I ever really took time off from work was after my mom's funeral. And even then, near the end of my 2 weeks, I started feeling really, really intensely guilty. And I was a program director. I had multiple staff reporting directly to me. And all that stuff was handled. I had done a lot of stuff. I set all the systems in place so that if I needed to be out, they could step in and take over. And I still felt supremely guilty. Felt like I let everybody down by taking that time off for my mom's funeral. It's crazy work. And so the idea about John Henryism is the idea that we are qualified or validated by the work that we do. And it's not a positive trait, and I think it kind of predates the entire hustle culture thing. It definitely predates um, work life balance. Like work life balance, what? What? And so here's what it run it down. I measure the quality of my day by what I produce, which ties to my stability, which ties my sense of stability to being productive. I was born in 1979 and raised by people who were shaped by the segregation and civil rights era. My mom worked like she was in her hospital bed working on things. She was a nurse practitioner. She's an epidemiologist. She did research. She had a support group that she was running for Black women with breast cancer. Up until her dying breath, she was working. That's where this comes from, y'all. And I don't know if there's a clean answer to this, y'all. I don't know if there's a clean solution to this, aside from the fact that we have to recontextualize how we perceive work. Okay. And so By the time I grew up, legal segregation ended, but distrust of institutions remained. It was implanted in me. If you don't go out here and if you're not better than the best, you can punch your ticket. They're going to get rid of you. Then white folks are going to push you out. Um, and I'm dealing with that. The gifted kid syndrome, dealing with, uh, at the time it was untreated ADHD. At the time, I didn't even know I had it. My mom knew I had ADHD, but she never really she didn't hit me until I actually went to the doctor and basically said, "Am I crazy? Am I going insane?" And so, um, and the message I was inherited that over performance kind of reduced my vulnerability to changes in the workforce, which we know is bullshit, bro. Like we know that is complete bullshit. We know that if just because you are the best at your job doesn't mean that they won't replace you with two people. That's real as hell. They will absolutely replace you with two people just because you are the best at what you do doesn't mean that you're irreplaceable. Nobody's irreplaceable in this culture of work. But it was tied to that intrinsically. The entire work twice as hard to get half as far. I outperformed when I was in June when I was a junior in high school. I treated filling out scholarship applications like another job on top of a job that I had. Okay. And so and it was expected. You know, I looked around and saw people slacking and not doing what they're supposed to do and stuff like that. And says that not only am I gonna exceed at what you're doing, I'm gonna go above and beyond. Okay. And so one of the things that's super maladaptive, and this is something I know is not a great thing, is when grief enters my life and destabilizes me, I compensate by leaning harder into my work. I increase the amount of work on my plate instead of slowing down the process. And that's how I deal with grief. That is something that I'm trying to get my kids out of. I don't want them to experience that. And so John Henryism describes inherited urgency, and it's kind of passed down from generation to generation to generation that we can never take a day off. We can't afford to pause. Even when we take a vacation, we got to be back up in that bitch ready to rock and roll without missing a beat. Okay. And so I'm saying all that to say this. I don't have an explanation for this. I don't have an answer for this. I know that it's not something great about me. Um, and I'm struggling with that every single day because I still haven't taken any real time to pause and reflect on my loss. I've just worked straight through it. Not a great thing, not a great set of skills to have. But like I said, I do think it's a generational thing. I think as we get further and further away from that generation of segregation and stuff like that, as we start getting further and further away, that work twice as hard to get half as far thing ends up becoming more hollow. Um, because at the end of the day, it's work just as hard to get half as far in some cases. And that's something that we need to address in society as an issue, as opposed to thinking that we're going to outwork it or outperform it. Because, like I said, I've known plenty of black men and black women my age that have worked themselves into early graves, chasing these brass rings, and trying to prove that they belong in the seats that they've earned through their blood, sweat, and tears. Okay. I've actually been told I've actually missed out in job interviews because somebody said you're overqualified for this position. And because of that, we can't hire you. It was so weird. But yeah, again, it's a maladaptive thing, but understand it does come from that generation because if you want to be honest, if we're going to be, I'm in that 70, the age cohort, um, which is between Gen X and millennials. And we are the ones that got hit with a lot of that black excellence stuff. And it drove and a lot of us have really achieved some major things. I look around and see my cousins and friends and family and stuff and people I went to school with, and they've achieved some amazing things. And a lot of us have done it at the cost of our own mental health and our own mental well-being. All right. So Here's the thing I need to discuss before I go pick my kid up. So one of the things is, and this is an abrupt change because ADHD is on fire today. Um, my son and I were riding in the car, and I was kind of talking about back in the days what we used to do as teenagers and stuff. He was curious, and so I'm talking to him. And we'd had this conversation before. And locally, we used to have this amusement park called Peony Park. And there's a whole racist history behind Peony Park. But when I was growing up in the 80s and 90s, that's where we went. You would get some money together, find an adult to drive you out there, and they drop you off Peony Park, and that was your entire day. And it was a place where kids could do kid things and have fun and hang out with other kids. Not everything out there costs money, so you could go out there and have a good time without having to break the bank, and you didn't have adults hovering around you or anything. You got to hang out with other kids and play with other kids and stuff. And my son kind of said, "Dad, we don't have anywhere to go." And it kind of struck me. And it's something I had talked to people about before. But one of the real interesting things, or thing that sucks about this world that we're in, is there is no place for teenagers to hang out and socialize. There's no space outside of the house where teenagers can really kind of kick it without being monitored or being treated like they're doing something wrong. And that's really bad. um, I remember we had multiple places. We could go to the park, go to the mall. There was an arcade that we could go to, Family Fun Center. If you had some money, you could spend your entire day there, hang out with your friends, and just be kids out in public without an adult leering over you. And now kids can't even go to the movies. They definitely can't walk around the mall without having some adult hovering around them and checking what they're up to. And it sucks. And so we get adults complaining, well, the kids don't go outside anymore. All they do is sit on their tablets. And I have a 14-year-old looking at me like, I want to go outside. I want to go out and do stuff with my friends. But where are we going to go? Malls were social hubs. That's where, on the weekends, my boys get together. That's where you go and talk to girls. You go out to the mall. You tell some girls at school, hey, we're going to the mall, we're going to be here at this time. You go up there, meet them at the mall, and you all hang out. We have libraries, parks, movie theaters, arcades. We have roller rinks, amusement parks. All these things were gathering places where a kid could exist, a teenager could exist as a teenager doing teenager things without an adult hovering over them. It is very true. And I've had the conversation where people like, was the Stranger Things thing true, where parents would just kick their kids out of the house? Yes. Yes. It was real. Um, get out, and I'll see you tonight. And that was kind of the expectation. I was able to come back home for lunch, but I didn't want to be up in the house. I wanted to be outside exploring and doing stuff with my friends. That was the world I grew up in. And so and I was the only child, so I had to go out there sometimes, with no kids on the block and go find my own fun. That world doesn't exist anymore for kids. And it's really unfortunate. One, you have the helicopter parents. Me and my wife are guilty of it. But then also you have places that used to be kid friendly are outright hostile to children. They don't want kids there by themselves. And the other side is, yeah, sometimes kids get together and tear shit up. And that's the unfortunate side of things. And so they rarely get a chance to socialize outside of the house. And when they do, all those behaviors, and there's a big extinction burst that happens, all the behaviors that they couldn't engage in, they want to engage in all of them at the same time now that they have the freedom, and it blows up into something else. I mean, hell, we even had clubs. Like when I was like 16, 17 years old, we had teenage clubs that you could go to on Friday and Saturday nights. They let out at one, just like all the other things let out, but there's no alcohol or anything, but there was music, there was a DJ. Um, the bar was serving juice and things along those lines, and pool tables and everything. And I remember very, very clearly. It was at one of our old bowling alleys. We would go up there and kick it. You pay your little $5 cover, and you had a place to go on Friday nights, and hang out and dance and all that other stuff. We had all this stuff. It wasn't like a school function or anything. It was a club for teenagers, 18 and under club. Um, Hell, in college there's an after hours club for 18 and under, or 18 and over, 18 to 21. It was after hours spot, and they let people that were 18 in, because after hours they couldn't serve alcohol anyway, and that's what you did. So you went to the after hours club till like 3 or 4 in the morning. Like, we had these things. And right now we can barely get kids to get out of the house, and the thing is, there was no social hubs for them to go. Where are they going to go? Many of these places have disappeared, and now, or they actively discourage teenagers from being there. Um, Malls have security that completely just mess with you. We dealt with the security. Like, I'm not going to front. We had security guards that were harassing us back in the days, but it wasn't as draconian as these people are now, where you could, if even if you were there shopping as a kid, they will try to throw you out, even if you're shopping and actually being a customer. Okay. Businesses often treat groups of teenagers like trouble waiting to happen rather than members of the community. And that's kind of a sad state of affairs, because here's the thing. We're going through this loneliness epidemic where everybody's lonely and stuff. And a lot of the loneliness has to do with the fact that people never learned how to socialize with other people in real life. They only learned how to socialize with them online. So I love when my daughter, I love when my daughter wants to go out. There's a little spot where they can play tabletop games and hang out with their friends and stuff. I like that kind of stuff, because it gets her into a kind of a pro social thing where she gets to be around kids her age and not have an adult hovering over them and monitoring every single behavior that they do. Okay. But yeah, when young people don't have access to unstructured social environments, a lot of their interactions become limited to school and organized activities or online spaces. And then when they get together, all the behaviors that they would kind of, um, you would see flashes of, all of them now are going to all jump out, because we have opportunity to do the thing we're not allowed, we normally can't do. And so you're instantly setting kids up to be on their worst behavior. Okay. And so it can resemble what we used to call it an extinction burst in my old behavioral science days. And it's where behavior spikes in because you're engaging in something that was previously restricted, when it suddenly becomes available. It's the idea of the binge when you've been on a diet or any kind of restricted um, diet or something. That binge that people go on, where they gorge themselves on all the stuff that they've been thinking about, but they wouldn't normally eat all that in one setting. Okay. And so that's what happens with these kids. Okay. And so, um, oh, shoot. All right. So I got about 10 more minutes before I got to go run and grab my kid. So anyway, I'm saying all that to say this: we need places for these teenagers to hang out with one another and be cool with each other and have fun, because that's the thing that's missing. Um, these kids aren't allowed to engage with each other in that manner, and then all of a sudden now they're not allowed to. Now when they do get together, um, it's chaos and anarchy, because they've been denied that opportunity the entire time. Okay, people, as human beings, we socialize, we develop social skills through repeated interactions with peers in real world environments. That's how you get socialized. Okay, you have to interact with other people. That's how you learn to hang out with other people. Okay, if we want young people to behave in public spaces, those public spaces have to exist. I can always tell the parents that um, I could always tell the parents that they never took their kids out to any restaurants or anything to teach them the social skills. So when the kid finally gets at a place, the toddler acts like a maniac, because the parents never socialize them to understand what behaviors to show in public and how to get attention in public and stuff like that. And then people are mad at the parents and mad at the kid, and it's like, well, yeah, it's kind of the parents' fault, because they didn't teach this kid how to act and how to sit in a restaurant, how to be in a public place when they were a baby. We used to take our kids out in, places where it was acceptable for a baby to be, but it was important to socialize them. So they would sit in the high chair at the restaurant in the middle of the day. If they started crying or making a fuss, we'd take them out of the environment so we're not distracting anybody until they calm down and then return to our seat. But um, we actually let our kids experience life in public, and it wasn't an act of unleashing them so they can act like an absolute maniac once they hit the ground. That's not how that works. Okay. Um, I got a lot of other things I wanted to talk about tonight, but I do have to kind of cut this episode short so I can go pick up my kid. What I think I will do is I'm gonna put a pin in this episode, and I'm going to try to return to it tomorrow night because I have a lot of thoughts regarding domestic policy and foreign affairs and our invasion of Iran, and how we are dealing with this weird online thing where, specifically on Twitter. I mean, Twitter is Twitter, and people get on Twitter and do Twitter things. But this argument, the idea of American imperialism versus American colonialism, and how some people who are external to the U.S. only see the imperialism side and do not understand what the colonialism side does. And so a lot of marginalized groups, a lot of people of color and Black people in this country have experienced a lot of the brunt of the things that American does as imperialists. We've experienced it domestically, repeatedly for 400 some odd years. And so those conversations need to be had. But right now, in the backdrop of um, what we have going on right now, um, it's very hard to do that. And so that's going to be the conversation I'm going to have tomorrow. And we're going to talk about um, American imperialism versus American colonialism. These two things are cousins, and they work in concert. They work together, but it looks different where you're sitting. And so if you're external to the United States, what you see is the image of the United States, the marketing image of the United States that America likes to present to the rest of the world. Land of milk and honey, unlimited opportunities, blah, 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 blah. And um, we know that that's marketing internally, especially if you are part of the colonial project, which means Black and Indigenous people. Um, if you're part of the colonial project of America, you know that the export of this land of milk and honey thing, that's all marketing. It's it's how America presents itself to the rest of the world. But then the rest of the world thinks shit is sweet here for people that are living under the colonial side of America, and it ain't. And so, but that's where the argument happens, and that's where people start bumping heads. And so, I've seen the arguments on Twitter. I've seen them essentially weird segments of people, and I almost feel like they're bots, if I'm being 100% honest. But I feel like there's weird segments of people that they take, America, white nationalists are running America essentially right now. Like we have a white nationalist government, a Christian nationalist in charge of the Department of War. Um, they're running America right now, but they're wondering why Black and Indigenous people aren't stopping them. And we ain't never been able to stop them from anything that they want to do here. Best we can do is best we can do is try to force their hand and take advantage of opportunities where they may have some institutional weakness and exploit them. But at the end of the day, we ain't never stopped this country from doing the shit that it wants to do. And to put that expectation on people that are in the colonial side of America is crazy. So yeah, but that's kind of the conversation we're gonna have tomorrow. Plus, I owe you guys a Wonder Man review because Wonder Man is dope. I'm really enjoying it. Um, and I got to give you my take on that. And hopefully, this is the future of how they do Marvel shows, where it doesn't have to be cleanly tied to a superhero narrative. Um, we can still have superhero stuff, people with superpowers, That doesn't have to be the totality of the story. We can tell other stories, and so Wonder Man was a super compelling, interesting character study of an actor working in Hollywood who just happened to have superpowers in a world where it was outlaw. It wasn't actors with superpowers were not allowed, and it was really interesting. And it didn't really go into the superheroics thing, save for maybe a couple of scenes in the episode, but a lot of character development, a lot of conversations, a lot of dialogue that was really really good. Um, the actor that got to play Wonder Man is amazing, and it's this weird meta commentary where you're watching an actor playing an actor go through the process of method acting. It was really kind of dope. And so I want to talk about Wonder Man too. But alas, I'm 30 minutes in. I gotta go pick up my 14-year-old. So what I will do is I'm gonna spin the block on this. I will return excuse me, I will return hopefully tomorrow to cover what's going on in Iran, rundown on Wonder Man, maybe Absolute Batman, the Poison Ivy thing, and a couple other things. So that's all I got. I'll talk to y'all later. Thanks for tuning in for the abbreviated episode. I will talk to y'all later. Peace.